In addition to writing Dark Journey, the Jaina-centric novel of the New Jedi Order series, Elaine Cunningham also wrote 3 short stories for the Star Wars Gamer magazine. Red Sky, Blue Flame first appeared in issue 7 in November of 2001 and dealt with young Jagged Fell's difficulty of fitting into Chiss society. Oh, and there's also a pirate attack. So as you may have noticed from my reviews, Jaina is probably my favorite of the solo children. So I was also interested in characters who were adjacent to her, like Jag Fell. I bought Star Wars Gamer issue 7 in 2001 specifically for this story, only for my cousin to rip it out of my hands and rip it in half. I have never forgiven him. So, a brief summary. When pirates attack the secret Chiss training outpost in the Rada Nebula, Jagged Fell must prove his command abilities to Sean Kerr and his other Chiss comrades. So first, a rather large timeline disclaimer. Placing Red Sky Blue Flame into the Star Wars timeline is a little bit tricky. Cunningham clearly intended it to take place not long after Vision of the Future, in 19 years after the Battle of Yavin, because we have references to the Jedi saboteurs, and we also have this pirate attack, which seems to be implied to be the Cavrilhu pirates from the Hand of Thrawn duology. In addition, we're told that Jag Fell is 14 years old, which would make him born around 5 ABY. However, in Red Sky Blue Flame, a character dies who reappears alive and well in Survivor Quest by Timothy Zahn, which is set 22 years after the Battle of Yavin. Additionally, Jag is described in this story as Baron Fell's only living son, but we meet another Fell son in Survivor Quest who's even older than Jag. And then to further muck things up, the new Essential Chronology states that Jag Fell was born 7 years after the Battle of Yavin, which would place this story around 21 ABY. So it's a big old mess. I think the easiest solution is to have this set at 19 ABY right after Vision of the Future, and that somehow the character who dies survives and shows up again 3 years later. But none of this is Cunningham's fault. Survivor's Quest didn't come out until 2004, and the new Essential Chronology didn't come out until 2005, so her continuity was essentially overwritten by subsequent stories. It's a little sloppy, but it wasn't meant to be. So first, the good. I really enjoyed getting to see a younger Jag here, getting to know a little bit more of his backstory, and getting to see the progression that leads from him here in this story to his first appearance in Darktide Ruin. To rise within the Chiss ranks, Jag has faced a lot of prejudice and racism and xenophobia because the Chiss don't trust humans and don't particularly like them, look down upon them, and feel very superior to them. But Jag's a good pilot, and more so, he's willing to admit when he's wrong and to think things through. The Chiss are very regimented, that they have a certain way they do things and they don't deviate from them. But Jag's able to think beyond that, so where I can see that the Chiss training has given him a lot of structure and has made him the very rigid person that he first appears to be, at the same time he's willing to take risks that the other Chiss aren't. Before the story starts, his brother Davin died, and the Chiss speak disapprovingly of Davin, calling him a hero. And I think what Jag has learned from his training and learned here is that you can be a hero and not be reckless. He's able to draw the pirates out, help the other students, but he never takes it too far. I think that's why I enjoy his interactions with Jaina so much, because Jaina will take things too far. Jaina doesn't always know where to stop. And Jag, I think, is sometimes wary of taking action, but once he decides on something, he does it. He goes through with it. I also like the comparisons of Jag to his uncle Wedge, who he's never met. I think both of them are inherent leaders. They just have to learn how to lead and come to the realization that that's something they want to pursue. And since the bulk of the story is Jag's point of view, that was definitely a high point for me. But there were also some things I felt more meh about. The first would be the clarity or confusingness of the action. I don't know if this was because I was reading a scanned PDF and the text was a little blurry, or if it was Cunningham's writing style, but I found it hard to follow the action at times, that I would reread a paragraph more than once just trying to figure out what was going on and where they were and what was happening. I think that if we had been given a map of the training outpost, this would have really helped because this is a completely new location. They're running to different areas, and I'm not quite sure where they are and how they connect. So I did struggle with the action scenes here, just grounding them and following the flow. And second, there were some developments with the Chiss that I wasn't crazy about. Dark Journey and especially Force Heretic Refugee had some further revelations about the Chiss and the Empire of the Hand and how they all connected that I don't think sync up well with Zahn's later books. But again, I can't really blame them because they were working on them before Zahn was working on his. There's just basically confusion about how this works. How I think it works is that the Empire of the Hand is somewhat separate from the Chiss ascendancy in that they're not officially sanctioned by them, but they turn a blind eye and let people who followed Grand Admiral Thrawn go off and do that. But at the same time, at this point in the story, the Imperial Remnant is not aware of their existence at all. We're told that Baron Fel is like an intermediary between the Imperial Remnant and the Chiss, and I just don't think that's correct. Second, we're told that Chiss mature both physically and emotionally faster than humans, so that what we would consider adult Chiss are 10 years old. And I'm not really crazy about this either. I think that Jag has enough to face the inherent prejudice they have against him as a human without adding different biology into the mix. He's 14. This means that he's technically older than the students he's training with because we learn that Sean Kerr, who's a full-grown Chiss, is only 12. And I don't think we need to add that confusion of different physiology into the mix, especially because that would make Chiss shorter lived than humans, I assume, if they age faster, and I don't see any evidence of that from other stories we've read. So it's like an interesting quirk she added, but I don't like it. So, in short, Red Sky Blue Flame is a fun look at young Jag, what he had to face in growing up among the Chiss, and how he first began to show his potential for command. I think Cunningham did a good job portraying him. He's very different than Jaina, but he's still likable and interesting to read about. Compared to Jaina, he's much more of a stiff, by-the-rules person, but compared to the Chiss that he's grown up around, he's a wild card. And so it's fun to see that juxtaposition of how we see Jag in the New Jedi Order with how we see him here. That depending on the lens through which you view him, he can come out looking a different way. But at the same time, I did find the action confusing, and I didn't agree with all the Chiss information we were given, but it's definitely still a fun read, and I will put a link to the scanned PDF down in the description box in case you want to read it for yourself. So next time, I'm going to be reading another short story by Elaine Cunningham, this one set before Vector Prime and featuring Jaina Solo, The Crystal.